Good afternoon. Welcome back. There are just a couple of matters that I just wanted to just summarise before we get into a discussion on conditions. One was just to update on the inquiry documents I'd received today. One was the corrected statement of common ground. The second was Mrs. Brady's comments on the 106 agreement, and I'd just like to ask whether or not you've both received those now. And yet, no, Mr. Boyle?
They haven't come to me, madam, but that's not to say they haven't been sent to the appellants, but they certainly haven't come through to me yet.
Madam, the council has received the comments.
Mrs. Wright, are you able to tell us whether or not they're with you?
Yes, we have received them. Thank you. I'm just sending them to Christopher now.
Okay. No, obviously they're not terribly long in terms of their size, but obviously make some important points, a couple of which aren't related to the application. So I'll just bear that in mind. I know Mrs. Brady's on the call today. I do want to make sure I give both sides an opportunity to comment on that. But it may well be tomorrow morning before you have an opportunity to do that if you haven't yet seen them. Two other documents. I've got the final draft of the unilateral undertaking, and I've got the itinerary for the site visit that have been received. Those 4 documents. Just wanted to clarify, and that's where we were with additional information.
Thank you, madam. Can I just on the itinerary, just a point, not that we have a problem going to look at it, but just so that you're aware, the yellow near number 51, I'm instructed, is not a public viewpoint.
Those are the ones that the council have added?
Yes, either the council or third parties. I don't know where they originated, but they came via the council. But Mr. Cook sent me an email just to ask you to note that.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, we can pick up that when we talk about the itinerary after conditions, but just to let you know that I do have that plan, and so that people can have a look at it in the meantime.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that was all I had in relation to documents. Any questions before I proceed? Can I just ask then for Mr. Boyle and Ms. Peck to let me know who's dealing with conditions on each of your behalves? For
the appellant, madam, it'll be Mrs. Wright, who's now just appeared on the screen.
Welcome.
And you've seen the conditions in the back of the statement of common ground as a draft to work to. So I shall pop off now. Thank you.
And for the council?
Madam, it should be Miss Cox, who I believe will be joining. Yes.
And just as I mentioned earlier on in the proceedings, the discussion on conditions is completely on a without prejudice basis. I'm formulated a view one way or the other at this point about the outcome of the appeal. But just to clarify 2 points, this schedule that I have before me in the statement of common ground is one which has been agreed between you both.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
And where might I find the appellant's confirmation about pre-commencement conditions? Because obviously I'm required to have that your comments on that formally at some point.
I can get that sent to you. Sorry, I can. Yeah, we'll get that sorted for you.
Well, you can decide which ones once we've discussed them on a one-by-one basis. Okay. So the first comments that we go through them page by page to start off with. I didn't have any comments in terms of conditions 1 to 4 on page 18. Are there any comments from either of you on that?
No.
Ms. Cox, you're on mute, so.
No, sorry, I don't have any further comments.
Thanks. In relation to page 19, the latter part of condition 6, appears to be an informative as opposed to part of the condition. Was that your intent, Miss Cox?
I think that is a drafting error. That important note would probably be best placed as an informative, you're correct.
Well, there's no provision for me to attach informatives to an appeal decision. So I just wondered how you were intending to deal with that matter, as to whether there was any need to deal with it differently. So was it your view that any part of that should be incorporated into the?
Gemma, would you?
I think it's it's more explanatory that I mean, in the event that obviously Part A, the details submitted to satisfy Part A, suggests that no further investigations are required. It could perhaps be incorporated into the condition, or I think it's a fairly understood point that sometimes the information submitted just for the first part of the condition, we can discharge the remainder of the condition on that basis if the submitted information was considered satisfactory.
Mrs. Wright, any comment from you on that?
No, that's fine.
Anything more before I move to the next page?
Not for me.
Just make sure I've got them in the right order. In condition 8, you've got a phrase which refers to other noisy works. I'm just asking you how that is precise enough in terms of the test for conditions. And indeed why it's needed in addition to condition 9. I think it's probably a sensible point to ask that question.
Yes, it is repeated in both conditions.
Yes, you're correct. It is as a standalone condition. Condition 8, I agree. I think, or other noisy works, it's a bit too onerous there, and I would probably suggest that was omitted. But in light of condition 9, I would probably say that condition 8 isn't needed.
And in response to comments made by representatives about the timing of works, have you got any comments by way of an update on whether that is reasonable to restrict hours of operation just to Monday to Friday?
The timings that are suggested in both condition 8 and 9 we're following consultation with the environmental health officer, and I would say that there's no exceptional circumstances in this instance to alter those conditions.
Sorry, Ms. Cox, I can't hear you properly.
I was just saying that the timings were informed by consultation with the environmental health officer, and I wouldn't say that there's any exceptional circumstances in this instance to amend those timings.
I would also agree with that comment as well.
And in relation to whether that's needed in addition, I don't think I can't see at this point that 8 covers anything specific that actually isn't covered in 9.
That's correct. I think 8 can be deleted.
I'm really wanting to ask why it was in there in the first instance as a separate condition.
I think it was purely a drafting error in that case.
And in terms of again, it's pre-commencement, so you need to pick that one up in your comments, Mrs. Wright. Yeah.
Okay.
Any comments on 21?
No.
In relation to page 23, obviously, condition 15 would need some amendment because the numbering of conditions will be revised. So I'll need to pick that up in the event that I need to draft these. Can I come to the wording of condition 16? And in terms of clarity, that's not a wording I would normally have seen in relation to a condition of this nature, because obviously the reasoning is separate in terms of compliance with policy. So can I just ask for your view on the drafting of that and why it's in the form that it is?
From a council perspective, it's been included to ensure that there is an appropriate mix. But the 15% mix of affordable dwellings being built to lifetime and mobility standards, it is purely there to ensure that that's delivered on site in accordance with policy CM1 and CM3.
Well, perhaps it needs to be more explicit in that regard. You'd say applications to reserve matters shall demonstrate, and then the elements you're expecting it to demonstrate. So I'm looking at it from the point of view of the test that the conditions have to meet in terms of their drafting. So I wouldn't have expected a broad reference to the policies, but a more specific requirement that condition is seeking to achieve.
Okay, no, I take your points on board there. That seems perfectly fair. I'd be quite happy to agree to a change in that respect.
Mrs. Wright?
That's fine. We can agree to a slightly amended wording. I don't know if you'd like us to do that separately and come back to you.
I think bearing in mind that is the quite specific points, I think if you are able to discuss the wording of that one in particular, that would be helpful. It looks as though there'll be an opportunity this afternoon to do that, so that I can have a look at that before the morning. I'm not suggesting you give a complete revised schedule, just the particular ones we picked up on, so that I don't have to do a spot the different exercise on all of that, which takes a somewhat longer. Condition 17 again is pre-commencement condition. Are you content with that as a pre-commencement?
Yes.
Condition 18 again would have a revised numbering in relation to the linked condition. It says refers to condition 17, and that will be a different number.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of condition 22, you've talked about the biodiversity management provided through the section 106 agreement. I think just that might need to tidy up the wording of that a little in order to meet the necessary tests. I don't think it would change the substantive wording. And I think in the reference to the reason that at the bottom part of the reason for condition 22, you refer to a document that wasn't supplied. So the supplementary planning document, I don't think is in the pack of information.
It is, I think, let me find the reference for you.
Yes, please. Just there are so many, I just wasn't able to readily find that.
That's no problem.
So it just enables me to just double check that.
I found it, sorry, it's CD 3.18.
Thank you for that. And then partway down in condition 3, you've got again prior to commencement of the development. So you've got a construction environment management plan. So that will need to be wrapped up in any agreement to pre-commencement. The next comment I had was on condition 24, where you didn't appear to have a compliance part of the condition.
Yes,
I would suggest that that's included to ensure then that the development is carried out in accordance with.
Yeah, so the same
with
wording,
any-
the same wording from the bottom of 25.
Yeah.
Reproduced again.
Yeah.
It's just important that you've got a hook to be able to ensure compliance. And then the note that I've got in relation to condition 26 was whether or not that could be combined with condition 9. Let me just go back and have a look at that one. So you've got a construction environmental management plan and then a construction method statement. What was the purpose of splitting those two out?
The construction management plan at condition 26 deals with loading and unloading of materials, storage of plant and machinery, and wheel washing facilities and like. Whereas condition 9 deals with different matters from a environmental protection perspective in relation to residential amenity.
There is an amount of overlap though. Maybe it was intentional and the appellants have got no objection to that. Leave it as it is. But,
we have no objection unless Ms Cox would like to combine the two conditions. I'm in her hands.
I think ordinarily the council would prefer to see it separated in the manner that it has been, but we will defer to the inspector on that point.
and in condition 27, you've got some duplication in the first line.
Yeah. Okay.
Which needs addressing. 28, condition 28, again, we've got another pre-commencement condition. And, sorry, it's quite a big schedule. I'm just making sure I've covered. You've got vehicle parking facilities covered by condition 19, and then again in condition 29. What was the reason for them being in both?
I think again that was a drafting error. So condition 19 should not necessarily relate to the design and materials and finishes, but it certainly is intended that condition 19 shows the position and location of the parking spaces that would be proposed.
So why wouldn't that be within the ambit of condition 29?
Sorry, so are you suggesting that by virtue of illustrating the landscaping, we would therefore be able to derive the number of parking spaces?
Well, no, I was just wondering why parking, why you were expecting the appellant to detail the landscaping in both conditions, the parking in both conditions.
I think the 29 was purely in relation to details of hard surfacing and what those areas would look like, whereas condition 19 was more intended to deal with the quantity and ensuring that a sufficient level of parking provision is being provided. So I do agree that condition 19 probably omits the elements in relation to the design materials and finishes.
No, it's in condition 19, but not necessarily in condition 29. But when we're looking at conditions, we really need to try to avoid any duplication, so that's what's required of the appellants is very clear. I understand the point that you're making. And maybe Mrs. Wright, you have a comment to make on that or not?
Yes, I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to think a way around this. I'm wondering whether we want to change 19 to a parking plan, Ms. Cox, and then the materials and finishes and design can be covered off in condition 29, because that would be the hard landscaping of landscaping of the parking spaces. So you'd have a parking plan in 19 to show the position of the parking spaces and the number of them, and then leave the design and appearance of them to condition 29.
Yeah, I'd definitely be on board with that approach.
We can discuss that maybe offline, and come back to you, Madam, with a revised condition 19.
The next point is in relation to condition 31. So you've got the accompanied by a scheme for the provision of electric charging infrastructure, and then you're saying development should proceed in full accordance with the approved scheme. Where does the management of them come in? Or would it be fair to say the provision and management of electric charging infrastructure?
Yes, we could include that word.
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
Just thinking that makes that in terms of whether it's enforceable and so on, we need to just tidy that up. Another pre-commencement condition on 32. And my question there was, why is it necessary for that to be pre-commencement rather than preoccupation of the first unit?
I think we'd want to get the details in to the council prior to development commencing. It's whether the works need to be carried out until prior to occupation of the first dwelling.
And is it reasonable for it to be prior to the first dwelling rather than partway through the development? I'm just thinking that the timing of the open space is slightly different in relation to when that has to be provided. So that's really a question in terms of sensible linkages between the two, should the development proceed.
Again, that might be something we can discuss offline.
You accept there's a mismatch there between the timings of that.
Yeah.
Okay, because that in essence is a glamping condition in any event, because it refers to land outside the site area.
Yes, a section. Some of the work is on site, but we would have to get a Section 78 agreement in place with Hampshire County Council to carry out the works that are off site on the Sunken Lane.
And is their agreement in principle in place?
It is. There has been extensive consultation with county, and they have seen the plans that have been provided.
And is that in the evidence? Can you point me to that?
It should be in the Hampshire County Council consultation response, but I will need to check.
Okay, perhaps if you could do that and let me know, that would be helpful. It's just obviously if I'm going to put a in the event that the appeal is allowed, if you're using a glamping condition, I have to have some confidence that it has a reasonable prospect of being achieved. And at the minute, that's the
And certainly from a council perspective, we were certainly satisfied in that respect, due to the lack of objection from the highways officer.
one doesn't always follow the other, I have to say. I think I'd really be looking for something in the affirmative rather than the fact that they haven't objected. Certainly in relation to a Grampian.
That's fine. I can get that information for you.
Yeah. And again, the timing of that, which we picked up in the other bit. Yeah, it's just to make sure that you know, whether the price of the occupation of any of the dwellings was reasonable for that to be completed. So you can give some thought as to what the justification is for that to be so far up front. That would be helpful.
Yes, certainly, Madam. Thank you.
Okay. Those were my queries as the conditions are drafted. Again, stress that this is without prejudice basis, but if you could get your heads together to look at any revised suggested drafting of the conditions we've talked about, that would be helpful.
Yes, shall we get that to you before opening tomorrow?
If you're able to, that would be enormously helpful. If it's there by close of play today might be slightly optimistic, but if I look for that around early on tomorrow morning, obviously bearing in mind that we've got a slightly later start, that gives me a chance to look at it and to raise any other questions that I might have. But hopefully that will deal with those issues. Okay, have you got any other points that you want me to raise in relation to that?
No.
I know that Mrs. Brady's points were really in relation to some of the detail for reserve matters, but no doubt once you have a look at that, you can pick up those points so that you can address those matters appropriately.
Thank you.
So, in terms of the site visit, I've got the requested plan, which deals with basically all the viewpoints that the landscape witnesses have talked about. I've got a request to look at the site from Harrow Way. I would like to have just some clarification on the point next to 51, which is on that plan.
Yes, of course.
Just to clarify whether that is whether I'm actually able to go to that site if it's not a public right of way.
That is, you are correct. So that point is a permissive footpath, and it is not a public right of way, but it has nevertheless been included for your consideration as to whether you wish to view the site from there, as it has been requested by a third party.
Okay. Right. So I've got clarity on all the points 1 through to 25, I think it is, from Mr. Cook's proof, and then the additional green dots, which are close to 13 on Pond Close, from the sunken lane to the west of the site, from the corner of 7 acres, and a request to look at to actually walk around 7 acres site, to have a look at that. At this stage, is there any reason why I would need to be accompanied on that site visit, or are both parties content for me to go and look at that myself?
The council would be content with you having an unaccompanied site visit.
Yes, that's also agreed with the appellant.
Okay, thank you.
It is self-explanatory, I think. It's self-evident in terms of the viewpoints.
In respect of the timing of that, my plan was to go during the week commencing the 11th of October. It's not next week, but the week after. However, bearing in mind that I'm going to be looking at landscape impacts, I'm probably going to pick the best weather day that week. For obvious reasons. I think in fairness to all parties, it's sensible that I don't go there if I can't see anything. So I will look at the weather forecast and pick the best of those days as I can. So I won't specifically set a nominated date in that week. Are you content that that's an acceptable approach?
Yes, I know that we will have to let the landowner know if you're. But what I'll let them know is that it'll be sometime that week. So we will just notify them to make sure they're aware of that. Okay.
If it needs to be more specific as far as the landowner is concerned, if you could let Elizabeth Humphrey know, that would be helpful. And then I can perhaps give 24 hours notice that that I'll be going once I'm nearer to a firmer weather forecast. And that's if in the event that I get there and I can't see anything, I'll just have to go back.
That's fine, no problem.
Okay. So in terms of the private land that you were referring to, that's just the site itself?
It is, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And is it necessary, I mean, we talked a lot about permissive paths across the site. Are there any gates that need to be left open for me to access that site or not?
Can I just clarify, I'm not aware that there is any permissive path agreement in place with regard to those routes across the site. So there are desire lines across the site that were referred to, but they're not permissive.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that correction. But if I'm to use the desire lines that are clearly being followed by members of the public, can I actually easily get into that site, or do then the gates need to be unlocked?
No, I would recommend that if you start on the Sheepfair Lane, the new access point, you should be able to walk straight into the site. There's also some, if you don't mind, go through a few brambles.
It's a bit overgrown.
But you can get through from the sunken lanes. So I would wear some sturdy boots and some trousers.
I'll dress accordingly. Okay. Are there any points? So I've covered that bit. Are there any points that you wish to raise before we adjourn for the afternoon?
No further points.
Ms. Perek, are you still with us?
Yes, sorry, I am.
No, don't worry. I know you're there in the background.
And no further point.
Okay, so in that case, it's the request of Ms. Perek. Is a 10:30 start agreeable to you, Mr. Boyle, tomorrow morning?
It is, madam. Thank you very much. And what I'll aim to do is to send through, as I did with my opening, I'll send my closing to the inspectorate for your attention for printing, but embargoed until the relevant moment when I get up to stand up, speak to it virtually. So if I sent it about 9:30, would that suit?
That would be fine. I'll ask Liz Humphrey to watch out for it around about that time. Is that acceptable for you, Ms. Perek, as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and that gives me time to print them off and be ready for a 10:30 start. In terms of the council and arranging the call, I'm conscious that you were planning on opening that at 9:30 as we'd originally agreed. Does that give you any difficulty in terms of setting up the call?
No, we would keep the call as it is, and people can still use the links that they've got to access the call, just at a slightly later start time.
Okay, could I then perhaps ask that you just put a notification on one of the windows that says opening at 10:30, so that people know what's happening if they tune in and nothing's happening?
Okay, yeah, we'll look into that.
That would just be helpful if that could happen. Okay. Well, on that note, I will adjourn until 10:30 tomorrow morning, and I will see you at that point.
Just a final point, madam, if I could just say, in terms of the sunken lanes, some very stout footwear would be advisable. It's a bit boggy in places, so just a word of recommendation, having been there.
Thank you for that warning.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.